ago when I first started doing this forum, we were sat around a table in the old traditional forum and something was thrown out there that there was this mystery sharps bin that lay in a park somewhere where we didn't know, in Lanarkshire. That was all we knew. And it's taken me a year of investigation to find this bin. And I'm going to present on this bin because Ross Miller, who's in charge of it, is not able to do it today, so I'm going to present on it. But before I found out about the bin, I actually went to the Health Protection Leads meeting and spoke about the increase in sharps that have been found in the community. And this was in Lanarkshire, which has started a bit of a project that SDF are working on disposal. So I'm going to zoom through that presentation and then the bit on Ross's stuff. So a bit of the facts and figures. So this is pulled from ISD, and it's about IEP transactions. So there was 309,000 attendances in 2016-17, which is a slight reduction. 4.5 million needles, which when I've worked it out, it's about 14 needles per person visiting. There's been 180,000 sharps bins go out, which has been a decrease of 8% in the past year, and the lowest since 2009. And what this means is 42% of people who go in for a transaction leave without a sharps bin. So we're not giving out enough sharps bins is the basic thing. You can't read this, but this is sharps bins here. So it's the only thing that stayed sort of constant. We're not increasing, we're not decreasing. So something had to be done about it. And why does this matter? So there's a variety of reasons why it matters, but the big thing that I've focused on is just done a Google search on why the sort of reason behind stigma and what people are saying. So these are just from Facebook and on Google. And I'll read out a few of them. So, dirty rats, Glasgow man warns parents and dog walkers after discovering disgusting junkies with needles hanging out of their arms next to a footpath. Dangerous syringes found in Dumfries Play Park. There's stuff about a top finds a needle and it has to be rushed to hospital after finding it in a Glasgow bus. So these were just a few of the ones that was pulling up from the local area and some from Dundee. This was just central Scotland. So some of the challenges, the size and shape of bins. So when I've went around Scotland, this is definitely something that's been coming up again and again. We've got a variety of different bins, but people saying they're not great. When we have a chat later on from Addaction of Lincolnshire, they've actually maybe got a solution to some of that, and they're using a single-use sharps bin. We can talk about the pros and cons of that later. For one needle, sorry. Where to return the bins? This became a bit of a discussion because people were saying that you couldn't just return your bins to anywhere. Some pharmacies will reject them, and that was a lot to do with some of the bigger agencies saying that they were having an issue just generally with disposal of bins. And just the environment in which you're in, is it even suitable to have a bin? But the risks are stigma. I think stigma is a big one, and that's the campaign that I'm working on, is trying to do a campaign that at the same time that isn't stigmatising. Injury to the public, we know this risk is pretty minimal, but as soon as they see it there, that's the headline. It's the public's going to get a needle stick injury and all this. This is a new one, and it's one that, if we're voting green, is this waste disposal and recycling workers. So we now all recycle our stuff, or we should be, and when we're recycling, these go through a plant in which people are having to handle this recycling waste, and if we're putting our needles in plastic bottles and cans and things like that, there's a risk to these recycling workers. But it's also brought up this debate about how much plastic we're using from these bins as well, so it's part of the bigger discussion to be had in the future. But who's responsible? So I've been delivering training to custody staff in Police Scotland, because a lot of the things I've heard is that people are reluctant to carry sharps bins because if they get stopped, it's an indicator that they're using drugs. The police are reassuring me that that's not the case, but that's definitely not. It's a bit of a conflicting argument that I'm hearing. Pharmacy staff or anybody involved in IEP, they're definitely responsible for trying to get more bins out there. I don't think it's acceptable that 42% of people are leaving without a bin. As John said, there's a lot of secondary distribution. Does that mean we need to be giving out a lot more bins with this secondary distribution? When I've been out in the van around Fife, I've definitely seen a lot of secondary distribution, but there's never the same amount of bins going out which matches the needles that are going out for these secondary distribution. So what's happening and where? This is the mystery bin. I found it. And that's why we couldn't find it, because it doesn't look like much. And this is actually in Morrisons in Perth. brought this up because, and I've been trying to get in contact with Morrisons because I want to know about this programme. So they're trying to implement sharps bins in all their toilets in all their supermarkets. So this is in Perth, and then this is the sharps bin that's moved a few times. So yeah, NHS Lanarkshire are doing something a bit different. So they've got all these things happening, but they decided to introduce the sharps bin in 2003 and 2004, and I'm going to talk about the history in a moment. But this is the leaflet that they use. So the sharps bin's now moved. I don't know, to me, if you didn't know about it, you would have no idea what it is, and you probably would just put your normal waste in there. So we'll talk about that as being a limitation. But the history behind it, so the whole history started in 2003 and 2004 when they decided that after some of these things that they'd seen in the headlines about sharps lying around in the community, that they would put together a proposal to have 12 bins, 4 freestanding and 8 wall mounted across Lanarkshire. That was rejected straight away. And then it took another 5, 6, 7 years for them to actually go ahead and put another proposal in, but it was just going to be for 1 bin this time, and that was accepted. So the proposal was for a freestanding bin within locally to reduce the amount of discarded drug litter. It was approved through the Community Safety Partnership Forum. The purchase of this was at the time was 1,100, but that's went up in price since then, and it was a joint partnership with that. The council agreed that the bin could go on site in 2010, but it's moved a few times. And promotion, so the harm reduction team just sent out leaflets. That's the only way that it was really promoted and spoke about it. Does it work? So it's emptied weekly by the harm reduction team. They have a 22 litre bin inside. So when it first started, they were saying they were getting about 16 0.45 litre bins. So what they're saying is actually, you know, the little, if you know what I'm talking about, the little 0.45 litre bins, people just using them and then putting them in the bin as well. Or they were using them as a measure of counting them. So that's kind of counterproductive if we're getting people to put the sharps in a plastic bin and then putting them inside a bin. So that's one of the problems. So they were having 16, but currently the bin's only receiving 5 per month. So it's not that great. I think there's a variety of different reasons for that. The first being that this is a mystery bin. It has taken a year to find out where this bin lives. But some of the other issues is what's going in there. So they said other ways, the most common bottle that was put in there was Buckfast bottle. That was something that they said. And paper rubbish, and it just wasn't being used for what it was intended for. The local staff, pharmacy staff, has also commented when they ask people about returns, they say that they have returned them to the outdoor bin. But the evidence on whether or not this is effective is unclear. But currently it does cost $1,254 excluding VAT for a bin. I think it's a bit excessive. And it's available from Barrington International. Now, when I was up in Shetland and when I've been in some other places, I've spoke about sort of having these community bins, and I think there is maybe a place for them, but we maybe need to look at the development of them and having a bin that costs that much. And actually, to me, that would just look like a modern bin when I'm walking through my park. I think we need to look at it, but I've seen some of John's pictures of sort of public injecting sites, and I think having something like that in a public injecting site would maybe be something that we could look at. So that is courtesy of Ross Miller then, that last bit.